what do you think about all that time, all by yourself, out on the road, peddling?
Now I don't race anymore. I kind of miss it a bit because it's quite a lot of peaceful solitude out there with your own thoughts and your own motivation and the calls of the sounds of nature around you, the wind in your hair, the wind passing by your ears.
So when you were spending all those hours out there, not competing, that's different because you're totally focused, but you're training, what were you thinking about?
All sorts of things. Technique, breathing, problems at home.
Oh, so it wasn't all focused on the cycling?
You spend around about 1,000 hours a year racing and training, and that's a lot of time. Sometimes you're in the middle of the Tour de France, but other times you're riding in the middle of a road, who knows where in the world, but often as a cyclist you choose the least traffic roads possible. And it gives you a lot of time, and this is what I miss most about not competing, is all that time alone to reflect. And because I grew up as an early child, I was born in Katherine in the Northern Territory, isolation, I'm actually pretty used to that. I'm quite very comfortable with it. And that's where what was really helpful for me, especially in the early part of my years, I could just go out in the hours on my own and just train, and I loved it. I still like it today, but I miss it because I don't have this sort of time to reflect on life. It really is really good thinking time, and if people who ride, they go and ride with friends, it's a great way to have a good discussion with someone.
You sort of describe the obsessive nature of the sport and your own obsession. You were very meticulous in everything you do. Is that you, or is it necessary for the sport?
One thing as a sport, I try to give myself every opportunity to get the best out of myself, and of course, lots of things can bring success undone. So all of the aspects to performance, I look to minimise any chance of bad luck or something not going right, and that's where I got very meticulous in my details in how I prepared for it. And I go into a little bit of that also to give an idea of what cycling is, and that's more the art of cycling. Why do cyclists care about the socks? Yeah. How high their socks are? Well, I don't know. That one I can't really give an answer to. Probably because they spend 6 hours a day looking at the people's socks in front of you, and after a while they sort of ask questions about them. But that's just in that regard, it's forced by the situation itself. But also, I refer often to the book, the bubble of cycling, or the bubble that is the world of professional cycling. It's its own sort of little bubble, and there, writing the book will also help me when I step away from. I gave 20 years of my life to this sport, and with great pleasure. But also, it helped me gain perspective and step away from being almost drowned in the details on here, now, performance, race result today, tomorrow. And have a bit broader perspective of it all. And I by the end of the book, I had a different opinion of my own career, a slightly different opinion of my sport. But that was all part of it. How did
your opinion change on your sport?
I think I had a greater respect for some people, team managers, team directors, and especially someone like my own coach, who was just so far ahead of his time, and the amount of naysayers he had to contend against or restrained him from doing his job. But just because he was 10 or 20 years ahead of his time, that's not a bad thing at all. But he just people who are visionary, they're held back just by the status quo, is really disappointing in life.
As a child, you weren't a normal child because you had this. Well, you had this.
I don't know if I'm a normal adult either.
Had this obsession with the sport and this attention to the sport, and as as you know, 12 years old, you're out there putting enormous time and effort and focus into it at the expense of whatever social life a 12-year-old has. Why is that?
My mother says whatever I did, I was obsessed by it. And when I fell into the sport of cycling, it just drew me. Every aspect of it fascinated me, whether it was the training aspect, the pushing yourself aspect, the technical aspect. It's a bit of a thrill too, riding down paths in the mountain through the forest or downhill at 80, 90, 100 kilometres an hour.
That's a thrill.
It is quite thrilling, yeah, especially when you've only got about 23 millimetres of rubber on the road. But that just drew me to it, and the more I did it, the more I liked it. The more I did it, the better I got at it. The more success you have at something, the more satisfying it is, and it just grew from there.